Tonight we have quite a lineup. Um, we have Salvatore Rosio, who's living in Matawan, and he's a regular reader all around Jersey. Then we're going to have Alexis Quinlan from Manhattan. Then we're going to have Madhuri Pavamani from here in Jersey City. She's another regular at Fox and Crow. And from Englewood, which was my mom's hometown, we're going to have Frida Jones, originally from Englewood. She's living in the Bronx these days. And our feature reader tonight is Richard Villar. I will introduce all of these people as they get up to read, but we're going to start with Sal Rosio, unless you consider Laurel and Hardy a decent start. I love that piece. You got to forgive me. Anyway, so Salvatore Rosio is a regular reader at many of the poetry get-togethers going on here in Jersey. He lives in Matawan. He's originally from Brooklyn. And to very young here, Brooklyn used to be a very different place when Sal was there. Brooklyn wasn't always the great real estate dream it's become. Brooklyn was a very different place. It was like authenticity in a word. Anyway, without too much ado, Sal's been with us. He's been coming to our readings regularly. I hope you enjoy it. Salvatore Rosio. Thank you, Sal.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jocelyn. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, cool. All right, so I have 3 pieces for you. This first piece, my son is going to accompany on the djembe. He's a little socially distant, so he's off to the side. He's not that shy, but so he's gonna start us in for this first piece. Go ahead, hit it. It's called Thwarting Anonymity. Thumbnails pry at parting clouds for passing convoys, flirting with disaster, backpacked hunchbacks with sore thumbs and calloused feet to follow Ice Age legacies routed through rock formations, ancestral archetypes drifting with frequency, interrupted postures, skirting danger on the edges of jagged icescapes, all too treacherous to traverse alone. All at once, with heaving anatomy, Paleolithic structures erupt from shale cavities on the sides of risen groundswells. Cold wind against wet skin evinces its direction and manifests the habit of nostrils to flinch from scent, dripping wet with stench, forewarnings of tussles with saber-tooths for the comfort of dark places. Flesh-dipped spearheads dripping warmth from sharpened stone to bone-chilling ground as flames splash dancing spirits on the darkness of cave walls. Long eons before rugged upheavals exuded crude extraction, nomadic tribes, stressed from genetics, walked an upright pilgrimage, resembling the migrating herd, draped in mastodon skins and swinging opposable thumbs, swollen from sucking and swaying like tusks. Pressing them up against the map of night sky, they gauge locale and develop an artistic eye for cave drawings, thwarting anonymity while evolving to hitchhike. So that was my first piece. Thank you, guys. The next piece, thank you, guys. The next piece is called Snooze Button. I wrote this last year, I think in the fall. It goes like this. I finger slap the snooze button on the alarm clock radio into another 10-minute lapse, then exhausted, take advantage of the pause in morning to crawl back into bed next to you and into the inaudible darkness dimly lit by the blue emanating glow of the digital AM time. The kids are safe asleep in another world under cover of pixie dust, in their dreams protected. I pull the covers over my head to dull the deafening, unseen and eerie, quietly loitering just outside beyond the silent shadows, beneath the muting earth underground. In the distance, a train chimes the hour as it cuts its swath through the morning calm of the northeast corridor, stirring neighbors in its whistle's wake, a broken hush perpetrated by pink flamingos and garden gnomes fraternizing on front lawns, and empty shotguns leaning lazily against rusted screen door hinges, no longer keeping sentry on front porches. My arm contorts around your left arm, cradling you, my left hand cupping one tit under your loose bed shirt, pulling you close into me, close enough to breathe you in. For 10 minutes, asleep. Then abruptly, transmitted FM radio signal interrupts our mutual slumber again, blaring out barely tuned from that vintage cassette-playing dual alarm clock radio, channeling the FMU like a boisterous child's haunting ghost, airing the beginning intro riff to Rockin' in the Free World. Clay Pigeon announces in his kilned and cooing voice the name of Neil Young to those glistening around the globe from their chosen illuminating transmission device, encouraging them to wake and bake in the glory of a new day. I could get up to start my daily enslavement to the bustling world, or choose to delay the inevitable for 10 more minutes of soft darkness slowly fading, too easily given by the snooze button, too easily accessible. But instead, stay right where I am, keenly listening to the raucous maw of the free world trying to break inside through the walls of our bound solitude, my arm pulling you tighter to me, my left hand full on the flesh of your right breast for at least that long. Thank you, guys. And this last piece is, so I did some pandemic pieces and I strung them together. I'm going to do one part from this pandemic piece. So as a whole, it's called Post-Apocalyptic Interpretations of the Pandemic, a Precautionary Tale in 4 parts. So I'm going to do part 3. So here it goes. 3. The epitaph reads, "Keep your eyes open and listen to the science, the experts, and the evidence." And that's a quote from Christiane Amanpour on PBS, air date March 15th of this year. Subtitle, Guidance Protocols Day 13, Strategic Maneuvers for Dealing with Panic During the Pandemic Crisis. Reporting from the press pit, 2 empty chairs apart, here to swallow unsolicited aggrandizing or unprovoked diatribe in the absence of Sharpie-altered graphics, assured by fireside spats of the excessive washing of hands of all this. Isolation, curfew, shutdown, voluntary measures mandated.gov in our best interest and against our better nature. Millennium underlings, years ahead of the curve, are already nestled in a learned and remote force employed to take the evolutionary leap fully transitioned within the embrace of emerging technology. All the while, beyond the overload of network buzzing across power lines, a lifting fog of rush hour traffic apparitions unveils highway congestion thinned to near empty. Bereft of non-essentials, the populace is recast to the set locations of drive-through test kit parking lots, cordoned off by lane cones and instructed by the muffled commands emitting from yellow hazmat garb wielding nasal swabs. A panoramic aspect ratio of surreal cinema, pandemonium, the new abode, informatics for the new normal, curbing novel crises for the new age, a blacklist extinction enabled at the behest of barons of broken things and blame inherited with hubris enough to lay claim to accomplishments to date never attempted nor imagined. In Greenwich, meantime, hourly processions float one after another, each one a pall of blue covering up the ramps of refrigerated trailers to become a closer gathering in the stillness, averse to the advice of living habits. Somewhere, an undying flower plagued by hope blooms into life, unseen, under isolation tents. And that's my work to share. Thank you guys for the opportunity. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello? Jocelyn?
You're good.
Am I good?
Yes.
Um, now I can see. The poet. I met her. I don't know how many people one can say this about, but I first met Alexis Quinlan in Dusseldorf, and we were both there as writers of writing about the city, and they had just opened a new airport or had fixed up the old one, and we met in kind of a lounge, and we both worked in the same profession for a while. Then I got to know her poetry, and Alexis has two books. What I'd like to say about her poetry, and this is my personal, sometimes you see mixed media collage where you're looking at different textures on one surface, maybe some corrugated iron with rough cardboard, and then a couple of ads. Uses language that way, in my view. You'd be reading along and texture is shifted under you so that it goes through your head, feeling it's changed. And it gets kind of a rhythm going to it, which is when I spotted that rhythm, that's when I thought, she's doing this to me. Lexus is a terrific poet, and I'm so pleased to have her again. This will be her second time with Backroom Broadsides. And she's a great friend. It's a joy to have her in my life. Alexis Quinn.
We are great friends, and we actually met in the first class lounge in the Dusseldorf airport. So you remember. Uh, that was a nice press trip. So I'm going to read three poems. I've been thinking a lot about climate change. It was really in a group with people writing about climate change, and so it feels related to what's going on now. Actually, one, not as much highway as we thought. The year PS 122 started announcing that we were all sitting on stolen Lenape land, like a slap I'd been waiting for. One of the slaps, one of the waiting, for what is on the bike path. I'm not naive about petroleum keeps me afloat. Opposing injustice, definitely. Opposing justice, definitely. Imposing justice. I'm naive about afloat. And then going to read Texas Hold'em. I see your extinction of Lake Michigan's Long John Cisco. I raise you two paper shopping bags from Whole Foods. I see your 7.5 acres of Brazilian Amazon torched by a cattle rancher in the next 59 seconds, and I raise you 5 refills of one water jug in 2003 in Austin. I see your 286 billion tons of Greenland's ice sheets melted, and I raise you one sunscreen-free swim off Cancun. I see your Great Barrier Reef's unprecedented bleaching event and raise you one plastic bag rescued from boyfriend's trash. I see I cannot avoid your November California wildfires and raise you 3 stalks of organic broccoli. I see your Darfur genocide, possibly our first climate war, and I raise you one city bike ride along the FDR to a temp job. I see I have personally witnessed thousands trudging First Avenue with phones held high before them, but no service until 39th. And I raise you one 6 outlet adapter for the bank lobby on 40th, where you can huddle for hours if you do not look homeless. I see your viral video of plastic straw pulled from turtle nose, and I raise you one Patagonia vest. I see your 6,547 metric tons of greenhouse gases. I raise you. I raise you. I tried to raise you right. I see your billowing, pillowing medieval clouds of hydrofluorocarbons, and I raise you one case of compostable doggy poop bags. I see your 700,000 acres of Iowa too wet to plant, and I can't always tell the number inside the triangle. I squint, I raise it to the light. I see your Swiss glacier spitting dribble. Do not fold, do not fold, do not fold. I see your brush fire sprung up on the I-10 median in West Texas, flames flaming from nowhere. I raise you one roll of 50% post-consumer toilet paper. I see your cherry blossoms coming pink on a freakishly warm January day, and do not fold. Don't you dare fold. No one always rinses recyclables. We all see your 74-inch Aqua Alta in Venice lapping, slapping, pounding at the stolen red porphyry of St. Mark's. And raising blind now, one freshman comp lecture on the language of greenwashing. I see or cannot see amber staghorn corals glowsily white. Here, I think I hear the bets calling, bets beckoning, the 50% post-consumer bets, siren bets. I scoop the chip. I am taking the 100% post-consumer pot, and no part of the pot is separate from the rest. This is the big win. I'm going to read one more if there's time.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm going to read enough. Okay. This is something I'm working on. It's in flux. What genius invented the white lady? On violence and freon. White ladies do not like polar bears fighting on melting ice floes. White ladies say fuck, 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 fuck. White ladies post about kill shelters on social media. White ladies want the best schools for their children, not all of whom are white. White ladies know you hate them. I think you know what I mean. White ladies believe we all have something beautiful and ineffable in common. White ladies have sex in dressing rooms. White ladies hate white too. White men send boys to war to protect them. White ladies call bullshit. White ladies are woke. White ladies want everyone to have clean water. White ladies know which natural deodorant actually works for them. Are pissed about wage inequity. Do not hand a white lady a plastic shopping bag. White ladies want everyone to see beauty and ineffability, certain crepuscular. White ladies are raped. White ladies use the word lady ironically. Some white ladies help their manicurist get a green card. All white ladies understand vaguely the cost of their existence to the world. No white ladies understand the cost to themselves, ourselves. I think you mean what I know. Need the house to smell nice. That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Alexis. It was great.
Thanks.
Our next reader is Madhuri Pavamani. I just said that like Italian, but she's not Italian that way. She's not Pavamani. It's like Pavarotti. Madhuri is a regular at Fox and Crow, Backroom Broadsides, and she sent me a letter about a year ago saying that she likes to write about twisted love. Well, she's got a trilogy, and she's also got a collection of poetry. And this is where it gets twisted, I think. The name of her book on poetry is I Machete. I mean, it's scary, right? Anyway, I'd like to introduce Madhuri Pavamani.
Thank you, James. So yes, I have. I write some twisted. I'm known for some twisted love stories, but today I have 5 pieces that I'm considering for my next collection of poetry that I think I want to call. I think I know the name. I'm not going to give it away just yet, but so the short and sweet and not so twisted. So here we go. The first piece I'm going to read is called Origin Song. I am from mango trees, dusty Chennai racetracks, and an old cowshed full of snakes. From a small Georgia town where everybody is somebody and we all know that snail. I am from tinkling anklets and jangling bangles and earrings too heavy. From Greenpeace, hug a pit bull and save the whales. I am from God-fearing grandparents and question the authority aunties. From my mommy's thick black braid and my daddy's determined overbite. I'm from asthma attacks and fatal peanut allergies and trying to explain both to non-believers. From red clay, fire ants, and the Ku Klux Klan. I am from not Indian enough and too brown for us. From your accent is funny and your house smells weird. I'm from British occupation and Midnight's Children. From horse ranches, wide mouth creeks, and kudzu. I am from yes ma'am and no sir and fixin' and y'all, with an umachi and a cha-cha thrown in for good measure. I am from engineers, surgeons, and college presidents, from progressive thought and hearty debate. I am from love and laughter. I am from anywhere and nowhere and somewhere in between, a nomad soul forever seeking home. Okay, my next piece is I read this is inspired by a line from Tina Chang poem. She's the poet laureate for Brooklyn. She's amazing if you know her work. Let me see. Let me line this up. This is called The End. Yesterday, I wrote a line about remembrance. Today, I want to write a line that takes me to the end of everything, which begins on Star Street, then curves around the corner. Meet me in the graveyard under that sign so we can thank the gods for Gloria Naylor. Today is a day for laughter and abundance, the kind that feels like forever and sounds like slow motion. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I can hear your heartbeat. It's mine. You gave it to me that night. And as I write this love song to the rhythm of your breath, the brown of your skin, the soft of your kiss, I no longer fear the end. When it comes, hold my hand like you do when we walk down the street to buy a bottle of grapefruit wine and some spicy nuts. Rub my thigh and I'll lick your arm. We'll laugh in the face of all the horror, and I'll write that line that takes us to the end of everything. Let's see. I have a couple of more pieces. I think I'm over time. James.
Yeah. Yeah.
This one is called. Okay. This is called Triple X. It's a true story. An immigrant story here. My mom and dad went to the movies one night when they were new to this country and its ways, bewildered, exhausted, and willing to take the chance. X and double X and triple X meant good and better and best. Imagine their surprise as those lights dimmed. My poor mom and dad were the fodder for a lot of my for a lot of my poetry. At least in this new collection, they have found their way into quite a bit of it. This next piece is more of like a romance poem. It's called Praying for Rain. It rains every Wednesday. This is what my love says as he gathers seeds to plant me a watermelon patch and salts nuts for our late night repast. He smiles and seems lost in memory, but I know better. He is lost in me. Night falls and we are sake and sermon, the politics of love, our dissertation. He sighs and it sounds like heaven. I smile and swallow his every hesitation. We sleep in peace. Each morning I rise with a mouthful of flowers and anemone fingertips, the sea of our bed, a tangle of legs and arms, beautiful brown bodies. He prays at the altar of my thighs. I thank the gods for his sweet breath. Together we are gospel. Okay, and this one is for my mom. It's called Things I Might Have Said to My Mom, but Knew Better. Don't be telling me ain't a word. I know ain't a word, but I like the way it sits on my tongue, rolls around in my mouth like it's got a joke to tell, like it knows it ain't real and it ain't give a fuck. That's it. Thank you.
You're very Your parents out of triple X movie houses. I mean,
That was like
that's how
way
you
back
get
in the day in
twisted
Seattle
love
when they
stories,
literally,
huh?
when they first got to this country, that was their. My mom said they left right away, but it always amuses me that it's such an immigrant story. Like we just got here and we have no idea what's going on.
You know, there's like this format now with where people will be talking on the internet and little bubbles of hearts and things will be going up. And I'm imagining the screen in the triple X movie house as your parents are watching it. With all of the different icons they'd be making on the screen as they're
Lots of
watching it.
eggplants.
Fresh from Kerala.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Anyway, thank you very much for
Thank
the
you.
reading.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Our next poet, when I think of Frida Jones, I think of jazz. She, her, her book is called Her Music Masquerades as Honey in My Hands. Now that's jazz. It's a collection I'm reading here. It's a collection of poems centered around jazz. Her play, Lucky Strike's Legacy, was received at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She's a producer of plays based on she produced a play based on Music Masquerades in Harlem in 2017, and she also gave a dramatic reading of In the House, Cave, canepoets.org, and other venues. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over. She did a tribute to Amiri Baraka, reading some of his poems. Anyway, please allow me to introduce Frida Jones, who is today, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're from the Bronx.
Englewood.
You're still from Englewood.
Yes. I go there all the time.
I had you on the Grand Concourse. Anyway, welcome Frida Jones.
Okay. Okay. Because of all that's going on, I decided to resurrect a poem that I wrote right after Trump was elected, and it's called Get Ready for Orange Winter. So, without further ado, we can see 4 years later if it was ever prophetic. So it says, the stage is set, crowds swell the streets. You can see the signs. Women lives matter. Black lives matter. All lives matter. Black, red, white, brown, and yellow. Holding hands, locking shoulders. Songs of unity fill the air. But behind the glow, we see a low, dark cloud rolling toward us. A cold front is moving in. Get ready for orange winter. Get ready for a new season of a Game of Thrones. Power pieces being moved into place. Watch for the cruel bishop, the so-called knight, the crook, a smiling queen, and checking his mates in all direction, a despot king. We are the pawns. Get ready for a travesty of justice and more crowding in prisons filled with disenfranchised and poor. Get ready. The 1% feels threatened, for this is what they see. White kids dancing to Bollywood rhythms, dreading their hair, freeing their minds, in sync with the world. People submerging beneath the surface of things, diving deeper beneath the skin and class differences. This is what they see. Girls in hijab playing basketball with homegirls in cornrows. Urban farmers growing sprouts instead of drugs. I hear music in the air. Tolerance everywhere. But get ready for orange winter. Get ready for the power of toxic words. Orange words that cover real words. Like fake hair, like makeup reality, the reality of control. Let's not forget, this is America. We came to these shores to fulfill promises. Recognize what are the signs. Low-lying clouds, rumbling thunder. Get ready for orange winter unless we dive deep. All right. I kind of didn't want to go too serious or too sad. There's so much going on. But I decided to, I'm going to share this piece called The Diamond Into. An into is a invented syllabic form, sort of diamond shape, has a twist and a turn. And it's about Black men, how people perceive Black men. And let's continue to break the stereotypes. So, hold up, son. I'll tell you about Black men. They're predators, juvenile delinquents, masters of criminal minds, good at running and basketball, jailbirds, bird brains, and pimping gangsters, beautiful and blessed with the grace of God, leaders ascending the crystal staircase. They're smooth, attentive lovers, eagles, hawks, elk, and peregrine, hopeful fathers and saxophone players, masters at math, painters, revolutionaries. We are the diamond in you. And that's the diamond into that I got at as a writing prompt at Acentos, which also had Rich used to come through. And I think he might have founded it. I'm not sure. Acentos Louder Arts. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to finish with a poem I hope is hopeful. And it's called My Power as a Cubist. So let's see what comes up. Because I was asked to really, what would I do if I had a superpower? That was the writing prompt. Okay, anyway. Born in the Bronx, no, excuse me. Actually, I just had a slip. It says born on the bayou, because that's where my roots are, and stranger than fiction. I had a strange type of predilection. Tingling in the tips of my fingers, certain swellings that rose and fell into grooves and design. This developed early and continued into my prime. With my tiny Black eyes, I could see, compounded and more with simplicity. It was really super, this power. I could pick up a pencil or a brush with mental powers, break or crush reality. For the world I see is already broken and fragmented. Each person's psyche reticulated and segmented. We, the people, with multiple identities and ethnicities, wounded histories, crenellated boundaries, separated by gender, disunited by skin shade. We are rubble, tumbled over in a surf of materialism. It was a time of neo-Dada and surrealism. But I choose cubism. All colors are welcome on my palette. I can paint with passion or collage my verses. I can save it on drive or drive in reverse. I patiently reconnect the jigsaw's shapes. Diamond, octagonal, or raggedly reasonable. Without fear, I paste over the splinters, replace the missing puzzle pieces, seal up the still raw scars with gel and pink tissue paper. Finally, I carefully add mirrors. Well, what do you see? Do you see what I see? Let's see ourselves back together. We are everyday people. We are victory over violence, full and not empty. Thank you so much.
Bravo. Thank you, Frida. That was beautiful.
We need some beauty.
What'd you say?
We need some beauty here.
Oh man, we got so much beauty here. It's gonna break. I'm scared we don't have enough bandwidth for all this beauty. Thank you, Frida. We're gonna finish off tonight. Rich Villar. Rich Villar is from the homeland of East Coast poetry, Paterson, New Jersey. And there's nothing that I can add to what's been said about Paterson. I tell people from coming from Europe that they should visit Paterson. It's kind of like Florence of New York, you know. But anyway, Rich is from Paterson. He has authored Comprehending Forever, and his poetry and commentary have appeared on HBO, NPR, and other journals. Rich he does poetry workshops. He teaches in high schools, middle schools. He gives presentations of poetry. And he was one of the founding members of a group. I'd like to learn more about this. Titere Poets, collective dedicated to challenging toxic masculinity. I know about toxic masculinity in this world, but especially in the Latinx community. I mean, his work and beyond. Villar's latest work is anthologized in What Saves Us, poems of empathy and outrage in the age, God save us, of Trump. Richard, it's up to you now, man.
Yes. Yeah, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Just kind of throw me a thumbs up if I'm good on this end. Okay, cool. So I don't have to kind of talk too much further up than this and blow people's speakers out. That would be bad. So yeah, originally from Paterson, the place of sort of poetic imagination for William Carlos Williams. If you know William Carlos Williams's work, I wanted to do something a little different. I'm going to read a couple of poems, obviously, but I think in this in this particular moment that we're in, it just seemed to me like I needed to try to do something a little bit more current to the moment. The moment is a really powerful one in our nation's history, and it's one that I think kind of demands to be kind of spoken to directly and right this second. And so I'm going to be reading a couple of poems and then an essay. I'm going to be actually ending off with that. And the essay is less a polished thing than just some thoughts about history and kind of where we're at. But to give you an idea of I am and where I'm from, I just wanted to give a couple of pieces about Latino identity, and in particular, one poem that is informed by my day job, which is as a social worker, right? So yeah. So the first one is a little less serious, but this one is called "There's a Big Ass Puerto Rican Flag on the Wall of My Apartment, and This is the Reason Why." We the rhythm section on flights to San Juan. We the people who applaud the pilot. We the TV screen, 6 train stations. We the Puerto Rican Day Parade, 116th Street Gucci Frito fedoras for sale. Flags in every shade of independence blue. We the cardboard upon which the head spins. We the turntable, record scratch, freestyle, and Metropolitan Opera House. We Latin jazz, Hector Lavoe, Puente Palmieri, La Lupe. We Tito Allen, Ray Barreto, Roberto Ruena. We New Rican identity politica. We jack agüeros on a hunger strike. We churning out boricuas by the hour and invading every classroom at Columbia, Fordham, and NYU. We stay repping Brooklyn, the Bronx, uptown, downtown. We Jersey too. We Paterson, New Brunswick, and Pertamboy. We the FDNY. We Títere poets. We see the cops. We keep it moving. Sometimes we're the cops too. Sometimes we discover the ability to fly. Mira pa allá, flying Puerto Rican with mad jet blue miles y un antojo de madre for some mofongo de yuca, because Uncle Hector posted a picture of that shit on Facebook, and you booked the flight the next day but your dumbass forgot to tell him where it was. So now you're driving around Rio Grande in a subcompact rental, driving around a town you ain't seen since God was a baby, searching for some place called Don Goyo, Don Pepe, Don Gustavo, Don Francisco, some place with a Don in it. When you finally get there are paintings of Oscar Lopez Rivera, Rafael Cancel Miranda, Blanca Canales Torresola, Betances, Hostos, Albizu Campos, and Lin-Manuel Miranda. And a third of the restaurant is shaking their heads hard, and another third of the restaurant is shaking their heads hard, and another third of the restaurant is shrugging their shoulders because they have no idea who any of these people are, nor do they care to learn right this second because they all ordered mofongo de yuca con camarones, and that shit is banging. We are not the cucaracha fairy tale of conservative imagination. We are not bounty paper towels or the Jones Act, not the food rotting in an untaxed port, neither shuffle nor shuck nor jive. We are not colonial debt. We will not sambo for your Wall Street violin. We ain't trying to hear about privatized beaches or cheap real estate. That's a plot we've heard already. San Juan Hill, East Harlem, Loisaida, Jersey City, Humboldt Park. Parks they turn into parking lots. We are not the exploded radiator of Doña Carmen who goes to Puerto Rico every year, not because she wants to, but because the projects are too cold for Noche Buena. We make miracles out of white rice and scrambled eggs, spam cans and papas fritas, alcapurria y papas rellena, a white candle pa tu tío y una verde pa sacar la loto. Doña Altagracia on the 7th floor, dressed in white, told us to watch our ass because el pendejo eso de Trump viene a sacar jugo de nuestros huesos. But what she didn't tell him is that we have a 500-year survival plan. We've dodged every overseer, machetes disguised as drum circles, skins stretched over wood and fire, flying turtles and ceiba trees. Sacred calls and responses. We've been through this before. We bring Yunque thunder to every iglesia revival. We march through every street brandishing our flags like bulletproof shields, the sacred sigil of the House of Huepa, insistent feet and street bomba, the young lords bringing medicina to the poor, el reverendo Pedro Pietri chanting aquí lo que pasa es poder al que pasa, y pa'l carajo con la junta, y que viva Puerto Rico, y que viva tu abuela, and the sacred cocina where no arrow can hit the heart of a people guided by love and patria. Gente, mi gente, we are all we ever needed. The stanzas of a poem being written in our own style, a lo New Yorican, a lo Boricua. Oye, reverendo, Pedro querido, we've gone and built ourselves a spirit republic, and this is the spaceship Casita. So the second poem is called At the Corner of Sheridan and McClellan. Frida should recognize these streets. They're in the Bronx. This is about this is a fictionalized account of one of my clients in my social work practice. This is called At the Corner of Sheridan and McClellan. The successful poem says enough to have her and her husband deported. The block is under reconstruction, and I say to Milagros, I will make the phone call to turn the wheels, to turn paper into kept promises for her 3 citizen children. I am the caseworker. I must find the proper pronunciation for misdiagnosis. Last week, her husband received a letter telling him to watch the sky for the Hornet Squadron. A lawyer working for free tells me ICE had the wrong Jimenez. They call off the guns for now. The nation is at war with itself. She says in Spanish, soy alérgica a la morfina. In Spanish, the nurse responds, no te preocupes. After the injection, Milagros drops to the tile. And someone, we will never know who, slips a new entry onto the chart. No morphine. The social worker looks up from her sandwich to explain in English that undocumented persons have more chances at Lincoln Hospital. That Milagros is entitled to 1 high-impact intervention, which means, I think, we can save your life, senora, but don't expect us to prolong it. On a tiny paper square, I write 2 questions in English. Why was the morphine sensitivity noted so late? Can morphine cause acute gastritis? For clarity, I copy the questions into Spanish. The doctor politely declines pen and paper and will not accept the form that allows an advocate to peer past the guard shack of medical practice. At discharge, she receives diagnoses, doctors, prescriptions, and the grievance procedures in English and Spanish. No mention of morphine, morphina, no mention of failing liver, no mistakes. She dreamed it all, maybe. Her migrant pains. The Army of the Potomac, sharpening its iron. The Army of the Shenandoah, blowing fire across the valley. In his diaries, General McClellan calls dysentery his Mexican disease, girded for battle, building bridges for Winfield Scott in Pueblo south of the Rio Grande. General Sheridan at the Columbia River executes Yakima and Cascade alike. Treaties signed to overrule the rush of water and breath. And Lincoln, the chainbreaker, allied white man, freedom bringer, and friend to all colors of the Americas, summons the two great generals to burn everything that is left. En la esquina de Sheridan y McClellan se encuentra mi edificio, señor Rich. Verás a la entrada puerta cuántos apartamentos el super se tuvo que cerrar por violaciones. Este landlord nos quiere votar y aquí no arreglan ni cojones. Perdón, Milagro says, por las malas palabras, pero es que ya no queda otra manera de decírselo. And with this, I write down vital statistics to return with speed to nonprofit funders who interject during meetings with questions like, there's nothing you wouldn't do for a client, is there? As though the country hasn't already swung the wrecking ball, hasn't already called you accomplice, hasn't already declared war, hasn't already marched across the Bronx River to meet the enemies of the nation and call them milagros. So, thank you. So I'm going to end off with this series of notes, which I'm going to be compiling into an essay. Yesterday, I was one of, I'm sure many of you, who kind of watched with horror a story unfold, which, you know, if depending on your perspective, is either a really old story or a new story. I'm proposing that it's not so new. This does not have a title yet, but there's yeah, let me just get into it. 99 years ago, the Greenwood Massacre occurred in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We literally don't know how many people were killed because this was an assault by air and by ground of white people against what was then the most prosperous black community in the United States. And record keeping was, to put it charitably, loose. When it was over with, 35 square blocks were leveled, and anywhere between 39 and 175 people were killed. If you didn't know about it, don't be too ashamed. Oklahoma itself only made it part of the curriculum this year, and only because the writer of Watchmen on HBO made it part of the story. Meanwhile, 35 years ago, May 10th, the Philadelphia Police Department dropped a C4 bomb on 6621 Osage Avenue in a law enforcement action against a black liberation organization called MOVE. The chief of police at the time made the critical decision to let the ensuing fire burn, which resulted in the loss of 61 homes and 250 people left homeless, none of whom were involved with MOVE at all. Of the 13 people who lived inside 6621, only 2, one adult and one child, made it out alive. 5 children died in the fire. The adult survivor, Ramona Africa, was arrested and spent 7 years in prison. We characterize the assassination of Malcolm X as the end of a sort of gang war, a religious war, even. Violence of the type we'll hear decried in response. The whatabouts we hear whenever there's an incident of white police killing unarmed black suspects. But what about black folks who kill other black folks, we hear ad nauseum? What about black on black crime? Malcolm X was blasted by at least one shotgun-wielding assailant at the Audubon Ballroom, most of whom were alleged to be associated with the Nation of Islam. Even that much isn't widely known. But what is lesser known is the fact that the NYPD ran a counter-surveillance program on the activists and the religious leaders and in Harlem, and that at least one member of the NYPD had infiltrated Malcolm's security detail. Less than 6 hours after Malcolm's assassination, the Audubon Ballroom was cleaned up for a dance. That's how fast we forget. In Puerto Rico, the leader of the Puerto Rican Nationalist Party, Pedro Albizu Campos, had been jailed on and off since the 1930s. During his final stint in prison, which began after the revocation of a gubernatorial pardon, and did you know such a thing was possible? Albizu was the subject of government radiation experiments on Puerto Rican prisoners, an actual crime against humanity, which was not acknowledged until the Clinton administration. From the time of his death in 1965 until almost 30 years later, we, Boricuas, were left to wonder why Albizu entered prison a healthy man and emerged with radiation burn. The idea that he'd been a human guinea pig was dismissed as a conspiracy theory. I've been thinking a lot about this, theory versus practice. We want to believe, hell, I want to believe, in a narrative of the American story in which we're getting better and more progressive, and that we're leaving behind the sins of our past. We believe in the theory of racial progress so deeply and so completely, we are willing to separate the practice of racial injustice as the practice of a few bad actors. These are hard pills to swallow, even for someone like myself, who believes in complicating the story of American history, who knows the foreign policy record of this country, in Latin America especially, who believes in the poetics of the political imagination and is under no delusion about American exceptionalism. I want the theory to be right, that 27 constitutional amendments, a civil war, and the entire decade of the 1960s mean that we are on a path to a more perfect union. But then, the sitting president of the United States orders protesters gassed, and black and brown bodies moved about by force, so that he can cross the street and hold up a Bible in front of a church he was not invited to. This in response to multiple camera angles, multiple camera shots in multiple cities depicting the murder of black body after politicized black body in a continuum of state-sponsored violence dating back to 1619, 1492, 12th century, the Crusades, Rome, Carthage. I think it's important for us as adults living in the worst time of civil unrest since the 1960s, which saw the state-sponsored assassinations of Albizu Campos, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr., to ensure that our friends and families are not ahistorical. If you're horrified at the images of looters and rioters in cities like Philadelphia and New York and Minneapolis, what you must also understand is that American violence is not born in a vacuum. This is literally us. Hot dogs and apple pie be damned. Race itself is an economic construct born out of the European conquest of Africa and the Americas. The merchant classes, the ruling classes, the classes responsible for fattening the coffers of Europe, needed a moral cover to subjugate continents, massacre its inhabitants by the millions, loot them of their resources, and kidnap them for free labor. Believing in people's inherent inferiority provided them with precisely the cover they needed. You might say that all happened 500 years ago, and you'd be correct. But what you must also understand is that every policeman who ever drew his weapon in fear of a black person, every white woman who relies on the police to execute violence on her behalf, every government policy that stripped black people of their homes and civil rights post-slavery is a direct result and descendant of that mentality. And you'd also be wrong, because what happened to black folks, state-sponsored violence and slavery servitude as commerce, has been happening to black folks continuously since the arrival of the first outsiders to Africa and the Americas, and that happened much longer than 500 years ago. There's a boy in a red shirt on TV, approaching the line of police deliberately like a cat, peering behind every face shield to speak to the human being underneath. He has stopped to talk to each man and woman, the brown faces and the white faces and the black faces, not unlike his own. And they are each one trying to mask their own feelings about this moment, it seems, this moment caught on camera and broadcasted out to the world. A few are stoic, a few smile at the audacity of this brown boy, speaking in a voice not loud enough for the microphones to pick up. A few faces turn their faces away from him. The boy in the red shirt isn't here to pander for the news crew or break his fist off on somebody. He has already moved back once under the police phalanx, moving forward. He's already seen and heard the flashbangs in front of the headquarters for the AFL-CIO in Lafayette Park down the street from the White House. He's here to talk, to give the soldiers in front of him a new set of words to follow. The boy in the red shirt is tall, lean, isn't raising his voice, wears a full backpack and a bottle of water, and looks like he hasn't seen the barber and won't for a while. His gait, his big hair, his height, his build, his refusal to acknowledge the camera behind him are not unlike the way my stepson occupies this world now. He could have just as easily been walking to the bus, or alongside his mother to school, or sitting in my living room playing the hero or the anti-hero on his favorite PlayStation game. The other day, my son responded to a speech he heard on YouTube in a way that showed us he'd been listening to his mother, maybe even to a lecture of mine once in a while. Kids are funny like that. One minute you wonder if you've been talking to an empty room, the next, they're writing dissertations around you. Or they say something quietly and without taking their eyes off you that stops you cold and makes you realize that you have to gird them for something they will never learn unless you teach them. Every human being has the responsibility to fight back against ahistorical perspective and understand that none of this upheaval happens for no reason. Yet you, yes, you are responsible to know these things. You, yes, you are responsible for dismantling the very social contract if it means that people will continue to die within it. Until we're able to reckon with the past, we will not be able to deal with the present, and the future will hold nothing but fire. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Richard. That was beautiful. Uh, I, like most people, I hope, watched what happened yesterday, and it's just a series of images. What you just, the essay you just read, the beginning essay you just read, it was it was like a voice on top of it. It was like a voiceover. Really beautiful. Thank you so much for reading for us tonight. Thanks to all of you for reading with us tonight. I feel like we brought so many different elements together tonight, and I'm just so proud of what everybody did. I love this. Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Frida. Thank you, Maudry. Thank you, Richard, again, and thank you, Sal. I'm reading across the bottom here. So, and of course, thank you, Jocelyn, for organizing all of this and doing the impossible technology, impossible for me. Everybody, have a great evening. Thanks again for this. And by the way, we'll be having another one of these on July 7th, first Tuesday of every month. We do this at 8 o'clock. This is the third one we've done online, but the Backroom Broadside series, we used to hold it at the Fox and Crow. They're having problems now, like most of those kinds of establishments. Hopefully we'll get back there sooner before. And we'll keep this going, though, because this is a different thing, and it's its own kind of thing. And, you know, this is the third of these, and there's been dozens and dozens of the others. So, again, thanks to everybody, and enjoy your evening. And thanks to Laurel and Hardy also. I wish I could. Dancing, folks.
Just work your shoulders, snap your fingers, one and all in the hall at the ball and all. Some more commence to dancing, commence to dancing.